Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're so happy to have you with us. I am Jessie Keller. I am a transfer admissions counselor here at MSU Denver, and today I am talking with Dr. Rossi-Katz and Shannon from the Speech Language Hearing Science Department, and we are here today to just chat about speech, language, and hearing, and answer any questions you guys may have, and talk about what this degree offers students upon graduation. So with that all said, welcome, and we will get started. So Shannon and Dr. Rossi-Katz, can you introduce yourself? Just go with your name, department, position, and we'll start there.
Do you want me to go first? Okay, so I'm Shannon Harris, and I'm the administrative assistant for the Speech Language Hearing Sciences Department. And I do a little bit of everything. I build schedule, I help students, I manage the website, I manage social media. I do a lot of things. So, but my main goal is to help the students, obviously.
I love it.
Thanks, Shannon. Good morning, all. It's great to be with Jessie and Shannon and you today, this morning. My name is Dr. Jessica Rossi-Katz, and I am a professor as well as the department chair of Speech Language Hearing Sciences. So I put those in that order because certainly first and foremost, I am a teacher. Department chairs do a lot of the administrative management of a department. So along with Shannon, we work on scheduling and budget, looking ahead in terms of strategic planning for the department. But in concert with all of that, I also teach 3 classes this fall semester, and those are anatomy and physiology of speech, diagnostic audiology, and a new class that I created and we launched in concert with other departments, which is health communications, which is a very timely course to be offering today. So I am happy to chat more about the courses or what's ahead for the department as there is interest.
Yeah, I'm curious about can you talk a little bit about those courses actually, and just tell people what they would be learning if they took them?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So one thing that I have observed is when people think of, if they think of speech, language, and hearing sciences, they oftentimes think about maybe in elementary school, how they themselves or maybe their friends went to a speech teacher, kind of went to a speech therapy room. And certainly that is a part and a very important part of what speech, language, hearing science career prepares one for potentially, but it is so much more than that. And we can definitely talk more about the degree and professional opportunities that the degree offers. But the thing I want to emphasize is speech, language, hearing science. So my classes are really heavily anchored in science. So we are studying biology, we are studying the physics of sound. So in addition to a lot of the clinical or human connection, we're rooted in science. I mean, what's amazing about speech, and I can kind of nerd out on speech and the brain and language and hearing for way longer than we have. But, if you ask somebody like, well, how do you speak? Oftentimes they'll say, well, you open your mouth and you talk. But really, aside from all of the processing that happens in the brain, speech involves a huge part of our body. I mean, our breath is what powers speech. So when we think about breathing and engagement of the body at large, we're also thinking about the medium that we produce speech on. So we have to study the respiratory system, and we study the cardiovascular system. The one thing I don't teach about about are the extremities. So I don't do a lot in the legs and the arms, but besides that, we talk about it. And we really put it into the context of spoken language in my courses, but in other classes, we talk about language organization in the brain. And as some might know who are listening, you know, language is not just speech. We have languages that are signed. We have obviously written languages. You could argue mathematics is a language. So we also explore some of the secrets there are as it relates to the brain and language.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
It
is. So I love it. And now I think where I want to go, and there's so much of what you just said that I'm like, oh, I want to like go more into it. But before we jump into it, I'm kind of curious of like how, well, for both of you, I'd love to hear the answer from both of you guys, but how did you get into this field?
Well, I can start, Shannon. You want me to start?
Yeah.
So when I was a young kid, my mom from a yard sale got a biological sciences teacher edition book, which was like, wow, the holy grail in terms of the answers are in the margins. So I used to, as an elementary school kid, maybe even into middle school, would go into my basement, and there was a little chalkboard, and I would pretend to teach about the body and science and biology. And it always felt to me like something so fascinating, and so like never-ending secrets to discover. But I knew that I'm also very much a person who wants to connect with others. So teaching came naturally to me, and from pretend play to today and in the classroom, whereas teaching virtually kind of still feels like pretend play, to be honest. It's like things have come full circle. I'm not in my laundry room anymore, but so the idea of being able to study something, I am a lifelong learner. I mean, I just love to learn, and then being able to share it and hear from other people as they look at this information and maybe interpret it in different ways was just fascinating. Mm-hmm. I did have a couple of years where I worked as a clinician. I'm actually a certified audiologist, which is studies hearing and hearing health and how to assist folks who have hearing loss. And I really enjoyed that time in clinic working with individuals, but I knew I wanted to be in higher ed. And there's just an energy at the college level with college students that I have always found very inspiring.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah. How about you, Shannon?
Well, technically, I'm not within the speech language hearing sciences field, but I did graduate from MSU Denver in 2017 with my degree in biology, and my minor was in chemistry. And so for like 6 weeks, I was so lucky. It only took me 6 weeks to find this job, but for like 6 weeks, I was trying to find something more within my biology field, and it's just a rough time out there sometimes. And so I was like, okay, I'll apply at MSU Denver, and I came across a really good opportunity within what used to be called the Communication Arts and Sciences Department, but now has been split into Communication Studies and Speech Language Hearing Sciences. And because of my science background, I just kind of naturally gravitated towards the Speech Language Hearing Sciences portion. And I love working with the Speech Language Hearing Sciences ladies because they're so smart and they talk about science all the time, and I love science, and so it's just really great. It's a perfect fit.
I love that. And it sounds like your majors kind of come into it very nicely as well.
Yeah, we knew Shannon was a right fit when I walked up, and she had like a 3D printed skull on her desk. Yeah. And it was like, That makes good sense, and like a women in science calendar.
I love it.
These are all really good things. But that, I mean, just to kind of continue what Shannon was saying, speech language hearing sciences, what used to be called communication sciences and disorders, it draws from so many different fields. So, biology, psychology, education, linguistics, all of those, when we think about our discipline and our department and our major, there is so much rich overlap. And theater would be another example. And they've done some cool collaborations with the theater department that I'm happy to chat more about if of interest. I remember when I was an undergraduate, we were part of Communication Sciences and Disorders was part of the theater department, just as it relates to the connection that communication provides us.
Yeah, and also like thinking about the theater side of things, you really have to learn how to project your voice. You have to learn how to like use your respiratory, like everything, and really understand. And singers too, like that vocal, like the vocal cords, and like really understanding how to work and not strain them, but stretch them, but be nice to them, like keeping those things. And we don't think it's those things we just like take for granted because it just happens. You open your mouth.
Exactly.
Actually, but some people open their mouth and some people open their mouth and they can't,
right.
And so I think it's something that it's easy to take for granted.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's an area of the field that is expanding a lot, is not just working with individuals who have communication disorders, but working with folks who have communication differences or want to optimize their spoken language. So it could be working with, one example is transgender individuals who may be male to female transgender, and they want to adopt a voice that embodies who they are. So speech language pathologists have increasingly been involved in services with transgender individuals who use their voice as their work, right? Like that is how they have a job, right? Be it public speaking or singers, and really talking about vocal hygiene. Individuals who may have an accent and want to not lose the accent, but enhance other accents so that their message is clearly communicated. Mm-hmm. So one thing that I just get so jazzed about this field is it in terms of the individuals and families, because so often we're not just working with one person, we're working within the system of that person. It can be working with people who have experienced stroke or traumatic brain injury, or who are born with clefts of the lip or palate. But it can also be individuals who are looking to expand how they're using their voice. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, just the opportunities that exist within this field is one of the most exciting.
Yeah. And it looks like we actually have a comment here from Ariel West, and she says, yep, trans are extremely important. And so, yeah, it's a huge opportunity to be able to work with transgender individuals and really help them through that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the voice, I mean, there's an expression like if the eyes are I'll probably mess it up, but if the eyes are the windows to the soul, the voice is the door, right? So how much of who we are and our emotion and, who we see ourselves as is represented through the voice that we use.
I remember when, I think it was one of our, what's the end of the year event called that we do, the Catherine Curran lecture, is something that the Speech Language Hearing Sciences Department does at the end of every fall semester, I believe. Yeah, and we a couple events ago, we had a woman, I can't remember what her name was, but she came and talked about how she works with transgender people, and I had never heard that side of speech language hearing sciences before, and I just thought it was like the coolest thing and like something I'd never heard about, and like it's just, it opens your mind to how many possibilities this department has, and it just was really cool, and I just geeked out about it. It was a really cool lecture. I was lucky to go.
I love it. Yeah, I think on that note, like, what are some of the, I know we've spoken a little bit about it, but I think we looked more on like kind of the stereotypical side. So like, can we jump into what are all the different populations that a speech language therapist could actually involve themselves in, and what do those different areas look like?
No, that's a great question. And so at the undergraduate level, it's a generalist kind of program of study. And then students, when they leave the undergraduate, if they want to be clinical service providers, they can become either speech language pathologists or audiologists, which is what I'm certified as, and that's looking at hearing and hearing loss. So we can talk more about that. The other things audiologists are involved with is balance, because the end organ for balance is in the ear, just like the end organ for hearing. We also work with folks who have tinnitus. Some people call it tinnitus, the ringing in the ears. So all of those are also considered under audiology. So when folks leave their bachelor's degree, and if they want to go on to practice clinically, they'd move on to graduate school. For speech language pathology, that's a master's level degree. For audiology, it's what we call a clinical doctorate. And within those areas, it's really what's described as cradle to grave. You know, for instance, speech language pathologists are working with infants who may be born prematurely and have problems with latching. So in terms of feeding and nourishment, they can work in early intervention in terms of enriching environments for the family system, certainly school-age populations we've mentioned, working in hospital settings all the way from like level 1 trauma hospitals up to skilled nursing facilities. And one thing that speech language pathologists do in addition to speech and language is they evaluate swallowing, which is usually folks are like, wait a second, what? Why swallowing? It's the same hardware, right? The same system that we use to create and shape speech sounds, like our throat and our mouth, is the same system we're using to chew and swallow food. So a speech language pathologist, in terms of like an ICU, is going to be called upon whenever there's questions as to whether or not someone can safely swallow. And that's life or death, right? If somebody has impaired swallowing function. So speech language pathology in the medical setting, along with working with folks who have acquired brain injuries, or maybe neurological diseases, progressive neurological diseases, are also involved with evaluating, assessing swallowing function, and then helping people learn safe swallow strategies. So that's just this whole other area, and where there's a lot of overlap potentially between things like nursing and nutrition and speech language pathology. And other kind of whole areas of practice outside of school, educational setting, and medical settings are a number of speech language pathologists and audiologists have private practices. So, you know, folks who are business minded and want to, you know, have a practice of their own, or they may work for industry. They may work in, like I do, education or higher education. They may work for nonprofits. So you know, in terms of the population, the expression cradle to grave, I think is a kind of a stark one, but it really does capture just how SLPs and audiologists are involved with diverse ages. And then the settings are, again, as I mentioned, just so incredibly diverse, which is what I think is so exciting about this particular field. And I talk with students. We have a number of students who have worked in other professions, other jobs, and they come and meet with us because they're like, I just don't, it's not inspirational for me. And these times have caused many of us to look and be like, well, what fills our bucket, right? Like what does feel kind of like our dharma, our work that we're supposed to be doing. And they find this maybe because an older parent had a stroke and they saw the speech pathologist, or they remember themselves. Maybe, you know, they have a child who stutters or has fluency problems. So they get a window into it. So we have folks from all different backgrounds like, oh, I want to pursue this field. And what I tell them is, so in my opinion, so amazing about it is that once you get your clinical certification, you can continue to reinvent yourself. So maybe you did work in an ICU setting for a few years, but then life evolves in such a way that you want to make a change. You don't have to get a whole new degree to do that. Like, yeah, you'd need to engage in some continuing education and maybe some shadowing, but this field allows you that ability to kind of redefine yourself professionally.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that should be really emphasized about it, because so often, you know, we pursue a path and it's like, okay, well, this is what the job looks like on the other side. And having options within this larger whole, to me, is really important. And the other thing is there's such a need for speech language pathologists and audiologists. There's huge need. The job market looks very good and is projected to continue to these positions to be in high demand. So I think that answers your question.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And I was thinking about so many things as you were talking, but something that kind of came up was, as you were talking, is there's a trend that like kind of close to every 5 years, people change directions. Or something changes inside of them and they are like, you know, I have to move on, or I have to change what I'm doing. And it sounds like in this field, when that 5-year mark comes, you can still build on your degree, but just go in another direction or go with a different population of people, but still be doing the things that you love in the way you love to do it.
That's it, exactly. And there are other options for folks. I just want to make sure that I also share, when you get your bachelor's in speech language hearing science, in Colorado, for instance, we have what are called speech language pathology assistants. And in Colorado, they're used in the school environment. But for some, the idea of moving on to graduate school either right away isn't in their kind of short-term goals, or maybe they're just not sure. So I also think it's important to acknowledge that even an undergraduate degree in speech language hearing sciences readies folks for next steps as it relates to job and what the career path may look like. And speech language pathology assistant is one example of that. There has been increasing move to using audiology assistants, not entirely unlike physical therapy assistants and occupational therapy assistants. So with a bachelor's degree and some specific coursework, those options also become available.
I love that. One question I have for you is, when a student is in this field as an undergrad, are they able to participate in any kind of research studies, and what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, great question. And one of the things that I think I'm most proud of our department is we're a small department. So Shannon and I, and then there are 3 full-time faculty members along with us, and we have a great cohort of affiliate faculty who teach or who supervise students in clinical opportunities. But there's kind of a core 5 of us. And I always think of us, and I sometimes write this when I write emails, as the small but mighty team, because we're small, but we're pretty mighty. And there's, even among the faculty, there's so much unique areas of expertise and specialization. So I'll give you just some cool examples. My colleague, Dr. Shiva Santhanam, she has started on campus what's called the ISAAC program, which stands for the Integrated Support Services for Students with Autism in College. So our students, SLHS students, have the ability to work with Dr. Santhanam on research for the ISAAC program, or become peer mentors, where they're paired with an MSU Denver student with autism and support them in their kind of academic and educational progress. So that's an amazing opportunity, really unique, because not many universities have dedicated programming for college students with autism like ours does. So Dr. Sandhanam is the founder of that.
I was going to say that I'm pretty sure that this is the only program in Colorado like that. I believe that is what MSU Denver wrote in their article that they featured about us, was that we were one of the only programs in Colorado that have something like that.
I think that's actually accurate. And the other thing too is that integration for students with autism into higher ed is sometimes really hard. And there's not a lot of support. I remember talking with her as she came to our department and talked and told us about her program, and I was like, oh my god. And it was just so amazing to hear about that. And then that she was mentioning that she has a really close relationship with the Access Center, and that's kind of how students are able to find her, because sometimes it's hard to find professors and find that support on campus. But I think what she was mentioning is for our students that are on the spectrum, they first start at the Access Center, and then from the Access Center get connected with her, and then she's able to connect with her students, it sounds like, as well. And so there's that, all the students are benefiting from each other. I love that.
Oh yeah. And that sense of community and building connection can't be understated. Even now, they're continuing to do the meetings virtually. And that's actually had some really positive outcomes with it, you know, so that's been an opportunity for our students. For the longest time, we've been an undergraduate only institution, and specifically speech language hearing science. But I'm excited to share that we have made good progress in our hope to have a speech language pathology master's program launched. So nothing is, you know, official as of yet, but we've met every benchmark that we've needed to meet a launch of summer of 2022. So all things going according to plan, which I always say is like weird when I am talking to people in my basement, but still all things going according to plan, and at least in terms of graduate program progress they have. We would have a program that would begin, a master's in speech language pathology that would begin in summer of 2022. So, you know, obviously when we learn more and have more, we have to go through professional accreditation, which is taking place right now, and higher ed accreditation, which is taking place. But when we, you know, have the final say, we'll certainly be making many different announcements so that folks are aware of that. But one thing that we're hoping to do in the grad program that we've built upon already in the undergrad program is really the bringing in bilingual and bicultural awareness with respect to the field of speech language hearing sciences. So even at the undergrad level, our students have had the experience, they've gone to the Denver Public Libraries and they have done conversational groups for immigrants and refugees who are learning English. So they've been part of that. We have students who go to the child care center on campus and provide speech and language and pre-literacy therapies to kiddos who may need some extra support. So research involvement, most certainly. I've had many students over the years work with me. One of my kind of areas of research is hearing loss prevention. So trying to get the word out to kids and young adults about safe listening, especially with the proliferation of earbuds and other types of devices. We do see an increase in recreation or music-induced hearing loss in young kids.
That's super fascinating.
And that's permanent, right? It's not something that goes away like maybe a clogged ear infection does. So I've worked with the theater department. We developed a play called Here's to Ears that a few years ago we had 2 tours where the theater students with me and the chair of theater at the time, Dr. Cookie Hetzel, developed this play, and we performed it for over 2,000 kids in the Denver metro area. So SLHS students were involved with doing some data collection to see what the kiddos who saw the play took away before and after it. So research opportunities are certainly plentiful, and they're really, what I think is cool too, is they're so applicable. They're really applied research opportunities, but then clinical opportunities. The other one I'll mention is my colleague, Dr. Marsha Walsh-Aziz. She was one of the first faculty in the inaugural trip to Mexico last year. We had a study abroad course at the Charisma Clinic, and the actual names of the acronym escape me, but it's a clinic that President Vicente Fox started, and there was close collaboration between President Fox and Dr. Davidson, President Davidson at our university. So my colleague Marsha, Dr. Walsh-Aziz, took a group down over winterim last year, and they spent 2 weeks providing kind of assistance and support within the clinic.
Wow.
So hopefully that happens again very soon, and once things where travel again is safe.
Yeah. So the next place I want to go is if a student is kind of interested in speech, language, hearing sciences, but they're not quite sure if they want to jump right in or like how far, they just are like, I want to see what it's like, and if I'm interested, are there any classes that would be really good for them to try out to see if that's like inspires them and really fits them?
For sure. And the benefit of this class is it's also a general studies. So even if you take it and it's like, well, that was interesting, but not for me, it will count towards general studies. So we have an intro course. It's called Introduction to Communication Sciences, and it's SLHS 1500. And I always describe it like a sample platter. It's a little bit of everything. We talk about the professions, we talk about the different populations we work with, we talk about things like augmentative and alternative communication devices. So folks who, like you were saying, Jessie, may not be able to speak, but can communicate through really sophisticated technology like eye gaze. And so we cover a little bit of everything in that class. So that's SLHS 1500. And that we run every semester. We also offer it in the summer. as an online course. So, and it counts as a social behavioral science general studies. We also have some more general interest classes. I mentioned the health communication class. And then my colleague, Dr. Walsh-Aziz, is going to launch a class that if folks want a little bit deeper dive after the intro, but again, they're not exactly sure if this is the area, it's called Foundations of Disability Studies Through Media. So that's SLHS 3000, I think, right, Shannon?
Yes.
Double 1500. We
Yeah.
had there was a rhyme behind this logic. So those would be the two I'd certainly encourage. And we are happy, like Shannon, reach out to Shannon. We can certainly provide our department email. Shannon does a magnificent job on our social media, so she can give you all those handles, a word that she taught me not all that long ago.
She's teaching me too.
So
Love it.
to folks who may be interested in even just kind of taking like a little bit of a backseat, but like, well, what's going on? Maybe they check out our social media and stuff to see the different events.
You can also, if you visit our website, you can check out all of our advising guides, and you can also click a button that says schedule an advising appointment now, and you can click it and you can choose either a phone or a Teams appointment, and then you can choose the professor and the day and time, and you can set up your appointment virtually, and it'll send you a confirmation email, which is very handy because I know I forget things. So yeah, so you can, if you want to talk to a live person, you can always call me. So
I love it. I'm gonna just put that in the chat over here. Maybe. I love all of that. That's super wonderful. I'm just gonna put your website in the chat, so then if people want to jump over there, they can check that out as well. Yeah. Wonderful. I like our conversation. I got off track, guys. And I'm supposed to be guiding us.
Well, maybe Jessie, maybe you want to set up an advising appointment.
Okay. I love it. Okay, we talked about research opportunities. I like that. I kind of feel like we covered this already, but maybe I'll ask it just in case we didn't cover everything. But what would you say is the coolest thing about majoring in the speech language hearing sciences?
Shannon, what do you think? What do you hear students say? I mean, I can give you the professor department chair view, but I was thinking, like, especially when we were face to face, like, what did you hear in the waiting area? Was there something students said that surprised you or was kind of unique?
A lot of students do it because they love working with kids. So that if you like kids, this is a field that obviously is great for that, because you can choose to work in an elementary school. But I know most of them, it's just so rewarding to help people. And you can help them in so many different ways. Like Dr. Rossi-Katz was explaining, there's just so many different ways to help them in the skills. And I think that's what students find the most rewarding, is just that they get to help, and that's what they want to do.
Yeah. And it sounds like being able to make a big difference in people's lives too, because although it's our throat in this area and we're like, oh, it's okay, it just functions, but what happens the day it doesn't function? Or I think too, like we were talking about all the different areas of which one can practice, and I was thinking about like people who either get traumatic brain injuries from a car accident or from some kind of accident, and then all of a sudden this thing we've taken advantage of is not there. How do we relearn how to talk? How do we relearn how to swallow? And all of those things, and to watch a person's progress in that has to be amazing. Also very hard. Not saying that it doesn't exclude the challenges, you know, but to be able to know that you're there and supporting somebody through that system or through that process, like I was just thinking as you were talking, I was like, wow, that would be really rough, but really like that would give a lot back, or would have the possibility of giving a lot back.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the aspect of being able to work with individuals who are at times in their most vulnerable, right? And we think about communication and just really how it connects us together. And I think what we're currently experiencing as it relates to the pandemic, but also not just the COVID pandemic, but racial injustices that are happening, and how a breakdown in communication, just how devastating that can be. So the ability to provide individuals and family systems with a way forward in terms of enhancing communication, it just can't be understated. And how different each person and each family unit is as it relates to what are their goals. It's not prescriptive. You have to be, and that's what I love about it, is as much as there's a science behind it, there's as much of an art behind it.
I was thinking the same thing, because as you were talking, I was putting together like, okay, we first started this conversation by talking about like the science and like the nerdiness, right? Because like that's super fun to nerd out on like how the body works, how things work together, how things happen, how does this body function to make it words, and not just opening one valve. But then we did jump into like the theater all of a sudden. So then you get to like educate through theater, you get to work with people in theater, you get to work people with music. So there's that like massive art piece. And I was just like, wow, it really integrates a lot. But then also the communications. And last week I had a conversation with Dan from the communication studies department. And they're like, this brings in that study of like the physical body, the practicality of it, but it also sounds like it includes a little bit of like, how do you bring clarity to one's speech so that you can really come through in the way you want to be too. And I love also speaking with the different populations and bringing in those transgender individuals, you know, of like really how do we redefine who it is we want and present ourselves in the way we want. To me, I was like, wow, that's a lot of things coming together.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of things.
It is. It's such a convergence of many different things. And the other thing that I think about as it relates to the art, it's also knowing, you know, how relational communication, and if you are serving a family whose child has Down syndrome, the kiddo has Down syndrome, you're working with the family unit, and you're trying to figure out what are their values and what are their goals and hopes for their kiddo. And at the other end of things, if you're working with an individual who's facing end of life, and there's discussions about swallowing and what's safe swallow, and you're having to have conversations with the individual and the family system or the family at large, you really just have to embrace your role in that process, and constant learning and constant, again, not going off a script, really being present and open to the possibilities and change in the environments that you're currently in. It's really humbling. I mean, truly, it's very humbling when you think about the different ways in which clinicians, providers, sometimes are a part of families and individuals' lives in very tough, vulnerable times. And just the ability to participate in that and hopefully offer options. You can't underestimate the reward of that in terms of one's contribution.
Absolutely. So when a student graduates from the program, do you guys have like services, or is there a way to connect them into the community to give them opportunities for a job, or what does that transition from like graduation into the working world, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for many of our students, they're going to move on to graduate school. So we write as a faculty a lot of letters of recommendation. I always get a little crabby over winter break when people are like, "How was your break?" And I was like, I wrote for 20 students. It wasn't really a break. So like the joke is people now know to ask me, did you have a nice change of pace? Because the word break is very like deceiving. So we write, the faculty provide lots of letters of recommendation for students, and we have incredible success, our students getting accepted into grad programs. We keep track of it, and on average over the last few years, we've had, I would say, 20-ish students apply for graduate school. And it doesn't always have to be an SLP in audiology. I'm actually writing, I have to remember to do this. This is a good reminder. I'm writing a letter of rec for a student who took our courses, but then really, is inspired now to go into programs, instructional design. So web design in terms of educational materials. So I'm writing a letter for her for a master's program. I write for students applying to Masters of Social Work programs. So, for sure, the majority of our letters are for students going on to speech language or audiology grad programs, but not all. There's other ones as well. And I think at last count, it's about 80% of our students are accepted into a grad program.
Wow.
And I attribute that just to our incredible student population. I mean, really extraordinary. And, how having talented students together with committed and talented faculty and staff really just, it's an exponential benefit, not just a summative one. So we have great success with grad school. So yes, we do support in terms of grad programs, writing letters of rec. Even during the semester, we offer things at the department level where we bring in alumni and they talk about their graduate program experience. We bring in community professionals talking about their day in the life. We do every year a letter of intent workshop. So like how to prepare your grad application. And then as it relates to if folks aren't thinking about moving on to grad school, we work with them to try and identify, well, what is it? What areas are you thinking about next? So we have students who I've recommended for jobs in local industries. So there's a company that's based in Colorado, actually, Cochlear Corp, who makes cochlear implants and other implantable devices. And we've had a number of students work for them in their patient support technician positions. So yeah, we definitely try and support in what way best suits the needs of the students. Shannon keeps an alumni list for us. So if a student's interested in a job or a school where we have an alum, we'll reach out and see if we can make that connection.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we work with Ruby at C2 Hub as well to ensure that there's good communication between the academic side of things and the classroom to career hub. Yeah.
Beautiful. Off of that, a random question came. How many speech language hearing masters or like doctorate programs are in Colorado? 2. I know CU Boulder has one, but is it CSU, the other one?
No, University of Northern Colorado.
UNC. Okay.
So at present, there is only 2, which, the demand is definitely there, and I'm optimistic that the time is right for ours to also launch. And we have great collaboration between those institutions as well. So
Yeah.
you have lots of students that have been there. Many of us are alums of those programs. So with respect to the graduate programming, yeah, there's definitely a need, because so many of our students, MSU Denver students, they have roles and responsibilities that go beyond student, and they may, you know, have children that keep them kind of within Colorado, or taking care of family who are older, or job. So they don't have that ability to just uproot and, you know, maybe move somewhere else to pursue a grad program. So we really, the reason for us to be working for this grad program starts and ends with, it's what our students need. And that's why
And also a lot of our students, like, yes, they're traveling from all different parts of Colorado in some cases, but a lot of our students are here in the Denver metro area. And like Boulder is pretty far, like not super far, it's possible to get there, like UNC super far. So like that would be amazing to have that. And I've also had students ask the question of like, when they're thinking about going into a speech language hearing master's degree, like what does that look like? What do they need to prepare in order to, and how does this program prepare them as well?
Yeah, so if you didn't have a bachelor's degree in speech language hearing science, what then would be recommended is that you take a set of courses at the undergrad level that give you that foundation. So we actually call it our leveling certificate, the idea that you're leveling the playing field. So if students have a bachelor's in another field, anthropology, political science, whatever it may be, we do have a comprehensive set of courses that they would then take, which would be prerequisites to grad school. And so that is first and foremost, I would say the most important is just that you do the undergrad classes and demonstrate success in the undergraduate courses. And like Shannon mentioned, we have all our advising guides on the website, and we can kind of navigate, you know, what the individual students' needs are. Aside from that, I would say having something extracurricular. We mentioned research involvement. The other thing I want to mention is that we have a really active student group. It's the National Student Speech Language Hearing Association, MSU Denver's chapter. So we also have their information on the website, but they're the MSU Denver NSSLHA group. And maybe extracurricular looks like taking a leadership role in that particular student group. We also are really fortunate to be part of our health institute on campus. So we have students who are working as student health ambassadors, part of that organization as well. So outside of academic classes, figuring out in what way would you like to connect to the field or profession at large, and that can look differently based on a student's interest. But student groups, research participation, volunteering as a literacy tutor, let's say, these are all other things that are important. The graduate exam, GRE, is sometimes students have been familiar with that word. There's actually a move to revisit that for speech language hearing science graduate programs in light of the bias that is inherent in that particular standardized tool. So I like seeing a deeper dive into the individuals and, you know, what they have done, and really reviewing that in applications, aside from looking at standardized assessments.
Absolutely. And it gives you kind of a more like a better picture of who that human being is, because standardized tests, some people are great at them, some people are horrible, and sometimes you'll have like the best clinical worker and just not doing awesome at the GRE. Like those things happen.
Yeah, you need holistic consideration for admissions, but anyone can declare themselves as an SLHS major. There's no admissions like there is for potentially nursing, where to get into the nursing cohort, there's an admissions process. You can declare yourself as a speech language hearing sciences major off the bat, and we also have a minor. So yeah.
I love it. Yeah, talking about that. So for nursing and social work, there are specific application processes. So for if any of you guys listening are interested in becoming a speech language hearing science, like going into the department, all you have to do, and if you're majoring in something else, if you're a current student, you just have to talk with your advisor and you can do a change of major. I think it's a declaration form, and change that major as well. But you will have to work with your advisor if you're changing your major. But if you're just new and you're jumping in, you can just choose it and you're good to go, and you'll do your general studies classes first and then jump in, and you can kind of intermingle. That's my understanding. You can intermingle the degree classes with your general studies.
Yeah, and that intro to communication sciences, if you're on the fence and you're coming in as undeclared, fabulous. Take the 1500 class and see if that feels like something you'd want to pursue as it relates to a major. It's a great, as the name suggests, introductory class to the field at large.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing, and we are like pretty close to time. Is there anything else you would like to add before we kind of close out?
Do you have anything, Shannon?
Just check out our website. I've worked really, really hard on it. It used to be a mess, and now it is so much better. And there's a student resources page that has all sorts of forms that you might need on it, like the declaration form. There's also a transfer course approval form on there, all sorts of good stuff. And there's also an advocacy calendar that you can check out it's a Google calendar that you can click into, and it has advocacy months or weeks or days of things that are related to speech language hearing sciences, so you can be an advocate for people within your field, which is really awesome.
I'm looking at it right now. I have two screens over here, and I'm like, oh wow, that's so cool. That took a lot of time.
He has worked a lot on it. And the other thing that's on there is Shannon does, we used to have this when we were all face-to-face, we had a bulletin board that was like, get to know your SLHS team. And Shannon would ask a question, a monthly question, and she has moved that virtually.
Yes.
So at the very least, if you would want to know what food or beverage I would sustain myself on if it was the only thing I could drink or eat for the rest of my life, you can find that out on our website. Yep. Or what I would be if I was not a professor. And today's answer is a potter or ceramicist. That's my current thinking. So even if you just want, for a question of the SLHS faculty, you can find that on the website.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Wait, so how often do you ask new questions?
I repost it like every month-ish. It kind of gets away from me sometimes just because that's life. But yeah, about every month you'll find a new question up there.
Oh, how fun. Okay, what part is it in the faculty and staff part?
You'll see it on the main SLHS page. Okay. It'll be like a little pop-out box that says, get to know us virtually. And then I also post them on social media, so.
I found it. Yes, it is. Oh, how awesome. Okay, cool. So I already posted the main link on this chat. So if any of you guys are watching, you should go. That was way too much fun. Oh my gosh, I love it. So you guys have like way too much fun. This is what I'm learning. And like we're very academic, very serious, very, very hardcore nerds, and then a lot of fun.
Yep. Indeed. Oh. No, thank you. And I hope folks are inspired listening. Just in terms of whatever they are choosing to do. And it's a tough time, and it's great to be able to connect with you, Jessie, and it's always nice to see Shannon. And I hope everyone continues to take care, stay safe, be well.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys have been watching and you're interested and want to learn more, obviously jump onto their website. I included it in the chat below. And just poke around, see what interests you, and like learn more about the department. I think that's the best way to really like see if it sparks something into you and if it's your calling. I know that a lot of people, or I don't know, I hear this a lot of like, oh, I got to choose a major in order to go to college. So one, you don't have to come in knowing what you're majoring in. You can take some like general credits and just understand what different departments offer. So there's that. Another thing I hear is a lot of people are like, hey, I gotta just make a lot of money. What I found is that people who come in being like, I'm going to major in this because I'm going to make a lot of money, actually make the least amount of money and have the hardest time getting in. So I think really looking at what is calling you. So if speech language hearing and this conversation is something that just sparks inside of you and it's calling you and you're like, wow, this like working with people, helping people, like that's when the finances come in, when you're in your true self. So if this is something you like, please visit them on their webpage. And if you want to apply to MSU Denver, do know that in the top right-hand corner of their page, you can click on apply. And if this seems like a right fit for you, go ahead and just click that. And then you get to talk with me or one of my amazing colleagues who can help you through the admissions process. I think that's all I have for today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Jessica. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been great.
Likewise.
Yes. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.